something that is so near and dear to my heart. I love Boca Chica Beach. My family for generations has been going there, and so the historical story is something really cool to me. So I'm going to read a snippet of a story that was told to somebody in 1937. Teresa Clark was a young girl in 1850s Texas and grew up where the Rio Grande flows into the Gulf of Mexico. The sand dunes of Boca Chica Beach were a playground for her and her 5 sisters. Her parents came to this area with General Zachary Taylor, and her father was superintendent of Taylor's Post at the mouth of the Rio Grande during the Mexican-American War. The Clarks had rent houses, a general store, livestock, and the village became known as Clarksville. In 1846, Clark was also the agent for the steamboat operations of King and Kennedy, 2 names undoubtedly known by us Texans. And this is actually where it all began for them. Steamboat transportation was crucial with the arrival of General Taylor. Supplies and troops were moved from Point Isabel and Brazos Island to the mouth of the river. This area didn't have all the bloody battles in this particular war that Buena Vista and Saltillo had. Fast forward to the 1860s. The first 2 years of the Civil War were pretty uneventful at Boca Chica Beach. The family enjoyed a quiet life at home. Baghdad, Mexico, which was across the river, was a small community, and the 2 villages enjoyed a mutual peaceful existence. But by 1864-65, Baghdad had swelled to 25,000 people. Right there at the river where we go, and there's nothing. There were 25,000 people there. The town had attracted unsavory characters like cotton brokers, sailors, teamsters, gamblers, and basically every kind of criminal looking to make a fast buck. They came from as far as New Orleans. All of the ports everywhere were shut down, so they were looking for a way to get the cotton out. Baghdad had grand hotels, and they had with elegant names, and champagne flowed. At times there were 300 English or European ships anchored awaiting cargo of cotton. This is an old map, I believe 1864, which shows Clarksville and Baghdad just right on either side of the river, right at the mouth, right where it's closing the ocean. This is 1866, where you can see Clarksville on the north side of the river and Baghdad, and it shows the difference of how Baghdad had swollen up to that many people because of the Union troops, I guess. Okay. A few years into the Civil War, life became difficult for the Clark family. Mr. Clark was a Yankee and therefore spent most of his time in Baghdad. Mrs. Clark stayed in Clarksville with the children. She was a fiery Irish woman and had no problem sleeping with a gun under her pillow. At one point, a federal gunboat fired over Clarksville, and Mrs. Clark wrapped up her 6 daughters and fled to Baghdad. Because that's where her husband was. 3 days later, she came back to Clarksville because Baghdad was such a horrible place. She said, I cannot raise my daughters there. So she came back by herself with the girls. The Federals took occupancy of the Clark home, and then 3 days later, Miss Clark returned and she fed and tended the sick men when she came back, which endeared her and the girls to the men, so they accepted her back and they kind of took care of her. The Federals moved to Brazos Island, and the Confederates moved to White's Ranch, which is halfway between Clarksville and Brownsville. And so the Clarks were caught in the middle of everybody's crossfire. At the same time, the French and Austrians in the service of Maximilian were garrisoned at Baghdad. The French gunboats scared the residents of Clarksville because they fired, and half the rounds that they were firing into Mexico landed in Clarksville. At Matamoros to the west, the Mexican army fought the French and Austrians, and on the U.S. side, the North and the South fought. So it was just a mix of lots and lots of fighting, and they were caught in the crossfire. After the conflicts of war had ended, life was still hard for the Clark family. They endured bandit raids, tropical storms, political differences from the men that were rebuilding the area. As fast as the communities grew and prospered, they disappeared. The hurricane of September 3rd, 1874 wiped them completely off the map. Baghdad and Clarksville were no more. The town of Baghdad was only in existence for 26 years. Now, I tell you this story because we find a lot of artifacts, historical artifacts, on the beach at Boca Chica. We find 19th century English and French champagne bottles, English transferware, pottery, and you gotta wonder where it all came from because there's nothing there. So we have to go to history books to find out. There's no traces of those civilizations ever even being there. The little girl that I told you about, Teresa Clark, I can't even imagine what she lived through. She lived through the Mexican-American War, the Civil War, all the hurricanes, all the tropical storms, as a little girl. It must have been some kind of life, I don't know. She was a teacher. She, okay, so this story, this particular story is just like a little snippet of a story that she told some of the people in the lower Rio Grande Valley Historical Society in 1937. They were remembrances that she had from when she was a little girl. Let's see, she became a teacher at Point Isabel in 1872. She married a railway conductor named Joseph Clearwater. She moved to Brownsville in 1882 and taught and lived there the rest of her life. She was a teacher in Rio Grande Valley schools for 63 years.
Wow.
So she had a lot to share. Okay, so this first picture is just like a group of artifacts that these are ironstone sherds. This is all I found at Boca Chica. Everything that I'm showing you today I found at Boca Chica Beach over the years. These are ironstone sherds that date as far back as 1840s. They have oysters and coral growing all over them, and they're really neat.
Do you find that on the beach or up in the dunes, or?
I'm going to get into that because it's really there's some ethical things and some unethical things that I'm going to talk about later on also about collecting these kinds of things.
Okay.
These are shards and pieces of wine glasses, wine bottles and champagne bottles. It's called pirate glass or black glass, but it is actually really dark green. The one at the top that has the V out of it, you can't see through it. It's completely black. It's really cool. And I brought all this stuff that you guys can look at actually here. Let's see. These are all pieces of pottery, and I actually collect English transferware, so I knew what these were when I found them, which was kind of cool. The one from the far left, going that way, these are the earliest pieces on this side. The one on the bottom left is mocha ware, and going over, this is feather edge pottery, and that's from the 1820s.
Wow.
And then the two, purple and blue, are transferware, going further over into the 1860s. Now, a lot of things could have come from other places besides those two towns. They could have come down the river from anywhere. So when things wash down the river, they could have come from anywhere. These are two bottlenecks that are the pirate glass again. They have applied lips. They're hand blown. And you can see that the glass at the top was just kind of smushed on there, so they're just hand applied. And then the top right is an open pontil from a bottle, a hand blown bottle. It's just the bottom of the bottle, and that one may have been like a pepper or a sauce bottle or something. This is my son's hand, holding a ginger beer bottle pieces. I find those a lot at Boca Chica.
Huh.
And ginger beer must have been extremely popular. I have probably 20 sherds of this kind of pottery and found at different times. So the bottom and the top don't match. None of those pieces match. They're all, but that's what the bottle would have looked like. And it held ginger beer, and it was very popular from 1840 to 1860. This particular bottom is marked Glasgow, Scotland. And then there are some light green bottles that I also brought that you can look at. And then the iridescent glass on the bottom right, when glass is iridescent like that, it's been out in the elements, and it's actually, bottle collectors call it glass disease, I think, because you can't get it off the glass, so I think it's super cool. This piece of glass I found like probably 10 years ago, and I thought it was so neat, and I really thought it was part of a flask. The glass is very, very thin, and I joined a group of people that are experts in glass, and they immediately said, "Oh, that's a cathedral pickle jar." And I looked it up, and by golly, that is exactly the bottle, and it's circa 1860.
Cool.
I mean, like in 3 minutes. Oh, I know what that is. Okay, this is probably a little more historical. These are two gunflints that I found, probably about 4 years apart. It's very difficult to date them because they were made from the 1650s to probably 1820 or 30. It's really difficult to figure out where they came from. Probably used in the Mexican-American War. By 1840, the U.S. military was using percussion, so they weren't using the flint guns anymore. But the militia probably was, and the surplus that Mexico was using probably was. So it's real hard to tell when or where they came from. They were probably brought over on boats for trade because they were made in France and England. These two particular, the one on the right is French and the one on the left is English. The one on the left is oxidized, which means water has seeped into the stone. You can actually age them that way, but it's not anything that I can do. The French, the Texas Historical Commission has a gunflint registry project that they did for 5 years, and the one on the right is we put in that database. So the Texas Historical Commission actually documented that particular gunflint, put it into the database. And that's the paperwork for the,
Wow.
yeah. I found it in 2017. Actually, my husband found it in 2017. I found the white one, he found the brown one.
Cool.
Okay. Another way that things are deposited onto our beach is through the Gulf Stream, when things move up from South America. This is a message in a bottle I found, and it is, I was so excited when I found this. I've never found anything like that before. I opened it, and it's in Spanish. It came up probably from Yucatan, maybe, up on the, because she talks about, we translated it, and I'll read the translation to you. It was in a little coffee jar, and it had 3 nails, a shell, and 2 coins in it. I found it in 2017, and it can't be any older than 2015 because one of the coins is dated 2015. So it's not super old, but it's super cool. Let's see, here's the translation. And it was really hard to read because it's got coffee stains all over it from the coffee. But it was, it's kind of like a blessing. It was like a blessing. Love of my husband and children, may I be the best in my class and have much success. I'd like to finish my career with a job at the PGR, Procuraduría General de la República, which is the Mexican Attorney General, with a large salary and be the best. I don't know, but they want to be the best because they couldn't be in Mexico. Could be anything. Be well known with my own business, open a store of arts and crafts, handmaids in Cancun with success. To be able to give more to my parents and brothers and give them a big house. And in closing, be able to visit and travel and see my brother and cousins. Finish school with best marks, love of my husband and kids, much love and abundance with humility and a big heart. Health of my pets and protection of my house, much light. That's what we got out of it. Other things that come up.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I was driving on the beach, I came up on that. I didn't touch it, I left it there, and there's not really much you can do with that. And there's this beautiful wooden door.
Yeah.
The wooden door reminded me, my mother was telling me, my great-grandfather, my Papa Johnny, found, in the 20s, found a mahogany log on Boca Chica, huge. And he went back and got it, and they made 2 tables, a nightstand and a right here, like a couch table, a little table. This is a piece of wood that I found. I don't know what it is, but it's hewn wood, it's cut wood, so it was used to build something. It had a rock snail and a ton shell, and the ton shell, they were both dead, they were lodged in there. The ton shell on the top is a deep water shell, so it must have been at some point in deep water, somewhere, somehow. There are hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks along the coast of Texas and the Gulf of Mexico. This is shipwreck number 1, which is on Boca Chica, and you can see it every once in a while when the tide's low. And these are some pictures. I think.
Why is it called shipwreck number 1?
Because that's how the Historical Commission named it when they designated it as a Texas archaeological historical site. It's actually a documented site. I took this picture last year. I've seen it a lot of times, but this was the time that it was the most.
And what part of Boca Chica, where is it? Like,
If you go out number
right.
4, it's to the right. It's to the right.
Okay.
I'll show you a picture with SpaceX in the back so you can kind of see where it's
Okay.
at. This is the hull construction, and usually I've only seen it, just kind of barely sticking out. But this day it was very much protruding out of the sand. And there's the bow. And there it is in regard to SpaceX.
So it's not very far down the beach.
No, it's not. It's just to the right of it.
Huh.
Okay. This is where I wanted to talk about preservation. This is where somebody has sawed out a piece of the hull to take it home. And this is very much against the law. We as shellers find things on the beach and take them home. By the time we find them, they're so out of historical context because they've been moved from where they were around. And when we find them, they have no historical context as far as an archaeologist is concerned. So that's really not unethical for us to take things from the beachhead, which is from the edge of the water to the edge of the sand dunes. Not in the water and not in the sand dunes.
The bottom of the sand dune.
Before you can't go up into the sand dune.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. It's illegal to dig for artifacts. It's illegal to disturb sand dunes. It's illegal to remove anything from any archaeological site that's documented on public lands. Those are the things that are illegal. Now, this is my favorite thing in the whole wide world. This is my Papa John and my Grandma Libby and my mom on Boca Chica Beach in 1944 when she was a little girl.
My mom had a swimsuit just like that.
I love this picture more than anything else in the whole wide world.
That is gorgeous.
Great picture.
My mom used to go there with my Papa John's dad, Johnny, the person I was telling you about when she was a little girl, and they would watch the manatees come down the river
Huh.
And I guess those aren't there so much anymore, but she remembers that. And I did bring all the artifacts, pretty much, that I have in the pictures here, back there on the tables, and you're welcome to go look at them. And if you have any questions, I can answer. I'll try real hard to answer them. And that's it.
That's
Great.
fabulous.